Good morning. I'm delighted to welcome you to this important conference focusing on creating domestic abuse-informed systems, services and workforces. My name's Councillor Maureen Chalmers and I'm speaking to you today in my role as COSLA's Spokesperson for Community Wellbeing and as the Joint Chair of the Equally Safe Strategic Board. COSLA co-owns the Equally Safe strategy with the Scottish Government. It frames our joint commitment to preventing and eradicating all forms of violence against women and girls in Scotland. It defines violence against women and girls as violent and abusive behaviour directed at women and girls precisely because they are women and girls. It is behaviour predominantly conducted by men, which stems from systemic, deep-rooted women's inequality. The strategy also confirms that children and young people of all genders can be and are harmed through mostly male abuse and violence. It further highlights that gender stereotypical beliefs, attitudes and expectations also harm men and boys by limiting their development, undermining their emotional well-being and mental health, and affecting their behaviours and choices. Gender inequality, which is both the cause and the consequence of all forms of gender-based violence, hurts and limits us all. Tackling violence against women and girls is not a niche concern, but rather one that is linked to many of the key issues and challenges impacting on life opportunities and experiences of our children. Here are some examples. Women and children's poverty cannot be considered or tackled in isolation from the other. Lone parent families are one of the 6 priority groups identified as most at risk of experiencing child poverty. And we know that 92% of lone parents are women. Economic inequality underpins women's poverty. Poverty is a risk factor which increases vulnerability to abuse. Economic instability and poverty are common outcomes for women and children who experience gender-based violence. What about homelessness? Domestic abuse is a leading cause of homelessness for women and their children. And keeping the promise. And working to tackle violence against women and girls, we're also working to keep the promise because we know that domestic abuse is one of the most recorded risks, concerns for children who experience the formal child protection system and registration. Under mental health, there is a wealth of evidence suggesting that children who do not have their needs for and rights to love, safety and respect met are at a greater risk of experiencing long-term impacts on their mental health. Living with domestic abuse or the experience of physical, sexual and or emotional violence and abuse in childhood as a child or young person has been identified as adverse childhood experiences that can create and heighten harmful and sometimes lifelong impacts on health and behaviour. I could go on, but I won't because I know I'm talking to people today who are dealing with and responding to these deep harms through our services every day. And here we must recognise and highlight the tense pressure that our local services are under. Less and less funding is available to local government as a whole, and this is impacting on the resources available to support the local commissioning of specialist violence against women and girls, children's services and interventions. As pressure on social work mounts, so assessments and support for children and their non-abusing parent or carer becomes more challenging to assure. It's becoming increasingly difficult to do more than respond to the emerging crisis in the lives of our children, young people and families. Local government is committed to and has the absolute intention to prevent and tackle violence against women and girls and its harms. To do so, there must be support for children and families, which is early, intensive and domestic abuse informed. Children's and families' needs are best met through a multi-agency holistic response that incorporates a child-friendly, non-victim blaming and trauma-informed approach that holds perpetrators to account. Where children and young people have been harmed by sexual violence and other forms of violence against women and girls, their protection and recovery must be supported by trauma-informed interventions and services delivered locally through coordinated pathways of care. I know you don't need me to tell you that this requires dedication, capacity and investment locally to achieve. But if we're to succeed in Equally Safe's ambition to eradicate violence against women and girls from Scotland, then we must ensure that our systems, services and workforces are domestic abuse and, more widely, violence against women and girls informed, and that the benefits of social workers and other key professionals engaging with families experiencing domestic abuse in a child-centred, strength-based way are understood and developed. The Safe and Together model is one model available that helps us to do this. It brings with it an internationally recognised suite of tools and interventions designed to help social workers and other key professionals to do this. The Implementing Safe and Together in Scotland, Creating Domestic Abuse Informed Workforces, Services and Systems Year 2 Learning Report marks the second in a series of reports highlighting key learning about the activities from the 12 local authorities and partnerships funded through the Delivering Equally Safe Fund to embed the Safe and Together model. The impact this work is having and the barriers and enablers to embedding domestic abuse informed practice and processes identified by those organisations. This is an important time to be coming together to consider our work through this lens. The Equally Safe strategy has recently been refreshed and has strengthened our consideration of the relationship between and across women's, girls and children's experiences of violence against women and girls, including domestic abuse. It makes explicit the links between this work and other key priorities that we work to progress together locally and nationally to improve outcomes for children and families, including the implementation of UNCRC, the Promise and the National Trauma Transformation Programme. The new Equally Safe implementation plan is currently under construction, so there is no better time than now for us to be considering potential next steps. And opportunities for joined up working across national priorities and agendas in order to achieve the best outcomes for children and families in Scotland. I wish you all a really stimulating day ahead, and I look forward to hearing what comes from this important professional learning opportunity. Thanks from COSLA to the Improvement Service and the Safe and Together Institute for creating this opportunity. The work you're engaged in today is critical to reaching our goal of an equally safe Scotland for all. Thank you.